Chapter 104. F***ck, Lu Rongrong, what do you mean by this? Zhang Xiaofeng was the first to stand up for Yun Jian when he saw Lu Rongrong throwing her weight around in front of his master. That's right. What's wrong with my Jianjian being picked up after school? What does it have to do with you? Why should I tell you? Who do you think you are? Chen Sini scolded Lu Rongrong before Zhang Xiaofeng could. Lu Rongrong had always been a spoiled brat. She was flashy but not practical. She pointed at Chen Sini angrily and opened her mouth. However, she stomped her feet and could not say anything. In the end, she snorted and ran away. Yun Jian could not help grinning at the sight. The morning sun shone in through the window and refracted on Yun Jian's rosy cheeks, making her feel warmer and more comfortable. It had been a long time since she felt so comfortable. Every time someone tried to pick a fight in school, Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng would chase them away with their sharp tongues like this. They were adorable. Lu Rongrong really thinks she's some spoiled brat. What's she being so cocky for? How shameless. Chen Sini was the first to flare up when Yun Jian was infuriated. She huffed and sat down opposite Yun Jian. Zhang Xiaofeng chuckled dryly as well before he looked around as if he remembered something. He turned to whisper mysteriously to Yun Jian and Chen Sini, do you know? The black market is holding an underground tournament this Saturday. It's at Longtu Mountain not far from our school. How about it? Do you want to go and watch? Heh, I can guarantee that the lineup will be spectacular. To convince Yun Jian to go, Zhang Xiaofeng emphasized, and I heard that it's a bet between the mafia boss of Longmen City and a foreigner. As a boy, Zhang Xiaofeng was especially interested in this kind of fighting competition. That was why after Yun Jian showed off her skills, he shamelessly asked to be her disciple. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows when she heard the words, mafia boss. The mafia boss was Su Haokol's father, Su Zetian. Strictly speaking, Su Zetian was a member of the Kosha mercenaries. Su Zetian wants to bet with the foreigners in a challenge tournament. Upon hearing this news, Yun Jian recalled the first time she met Snake Lizard and Su Zetian since her rebirth. Su Zetian had a favor to ask of Snake Lizard. Could this be what he was referring to? She pursed her dry lips to moisten them and said, I'll go. Zhang Xiaofeng snickered, thinking that his words had worked, and laughed even more cheerfully. Yun Jian's lips curled into a faint smile, which made people feel as if they understood her. She was devilishly charming. Just like that, a week passed by peacefully. When she returned home from school on Friday, Yun Jian received the news that Zhang Zhifan had approved the company's application. He had also asked for some connections and found a suitable store. The location of the store was great. It was big enough for cars to be displayed and the location was well connected. When the car store was opened in the future, it would not be inconspicuous due to its remote location. Since it was a new piece of land and there were many merchants who wanted to buy the store, the organizer decided to use the auction format, bidding and the highest bidder would win. The auction would be held tonight. When Yun Jian heard the news, she only told Zhang Zhifan, get ready tonight and go to the auction with me. Chapter 105. This auction was organized by the organizers, so more than one or two shops and plots of land were up for sale. In spite of it, Yun Jian only needed the store. Because the auction was a big event, Zhang Zhifan deliberately dressed himself up before going. He changed his appearance from that of a hoodlum to a suit, which made him look like a big boss. Before this, he was just a hoodlum with a loan shark. As usual, Yun Jian tied her hair into a high ponytail. She had a good foundation, so even if she didn't put on makeup, her facial features were still exquisite and delicate. Her eyelashes were long and narrow, and when she blinked, she gave people a feeling that she had a spiritual aura. She looked pure and innocent, but the slight curve of her lips made people unable to help but notice her. Before leaving, she knocked on Siyi's door next to hers. Knock, knock, knock. After 3 knocks, the door opened. When the door opened, Yun Jian smelled an elegant fragrance. It was faint, but it made her feel good. Ce appeared at the door. He was dressed in casual clothes, and his wet hair stuck to his handsome face. There was an unfathomable smile on his exquisite face. It was obvious that he had just taken a shower. What is it? Ce's lips curled into a beautiful curve. What is it? His magnetic voice was a little hoarse, but it was full of charm. Yun Jian looked at him with a smile and licked her lips. Lend me your car again. Ce's starry eyes flashed with a trace of sharpness. He turned his body slightly, and his tall body surrounded Yun Jian's thin and weak body. She could feel his breath coming from above. My car isn't that easy to borrow. How are you going to compensate me? As he spoke, he looked at Yun Jian from head to toe with ill intentions. It had to be said that although Yun Jian's body was thin and weak, she was still lean in the right places. She had developed very well, and there were signs of her curvy body. He believed that in less than 2 years, she would definitely be a great beauty who could charm a large group of people to death with just a glance. When Yun Jian heard this, she smiled and glanced at Ce from the corner of her eyes. How do you want me to make it up to you? As she spoke, she flipped her hair and took a step closer to Ce. However, before she could even get close to Ce, Yun Jian's delicate fists turned into eagle claws. She launched a sneak attack at Ce's waist. Her speed was so fast that normal people would not have expected it. Seduction was one of the essential skills of a secret agent. In her previous life, although Yun Jian had never been in love with a man, and had never even been intimate with a man, she would still make use of her lust to lower the enemy's guard, and kill them in one move. She obviously did not intend to kill Ce. She only wanted to take the car keys from Ce's waist. However, Yun Jian did not expect that Ce would be able to dodge her attack with a sidestep. His speed was actually faster than hers. Although Yun Jian had been training her body since her rebirth, her physical strength could not be compared to her previous life. Even so, when Ce dodged her attack, Yun Jian was stunned. When Ce dodged to the side, Yun Jian could tell that even if she had faced him in her previous life, she would not have been able to escape unscathed. Yun Jian suddenly curled her lips. She twisted her hand and threw herself into Ce's firm chest. The fresh fragrance of a young girl drifted into his nose. Ce, who had never been so intimate with a woman, was stunned. Yun Jian took advantage of this moment to reach out and take the car keys from Ce's waist. She then left Ce's chest in a flash and ran far away. She could not help but turn back to leave a smile. I'll take the car keys, thanks. As she spoke, Yun Jian had already run down the stairs. Chapter 106. On the other hand, Yun Jian had driven the Lamborghini to the entrance of Zhang Jifan's rental apartment and was waiting for him. When Zhang Jifan saw the Lamborghini, his eyes trembled violently. Obviously, he was shocked. There were only a few types of cars that he had seen on a daily basis. It was especially so in a developing city like Longmen City where sports cars were only affordable for the wealthy. In normal business, those who had some money would usually drive cars of brands like Santana, Honda, and Mazda. They were all cars that consumed low fuel, were affordable, and had average appearances. This era had yet to reach the era where cars were everywhere. Naturally, it was the best starting point to start a car marketing business. Therefore, when Zhang Jifan saw the modified super sports car, the Lamborghini, there was an irrepressible glint in his eyes. More than that, it was shock. Sister Jian, where did you get this car? After Zhang Jifan got into the car, he was still stiff, not daring to touch anything in the car, afraid that he would break something. In the end, he could not help asking Yun Jian. I borrowed it. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and did not explain further. She then started the engine and sped away under Zhang Jifan's horrified gaze. Soon, they arrived at the entrance of the auction. The auction was coordinated and organized by various major sponsors. It was a grand occasion and not just anyone could enter. If one did not dress appropriately, they would not even be able to enter the auction. Yun Jian did not have an invitation, so she drove the Lamborghini to show her status. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to enter the auction venue. How would he be able to buy that piece of land and open a car dealership? Of course, Yun Jian would not allow the possibility of being stopped at the entrance. The auction was held in the best location in Longmen City, the fashion building. At the moment, at the entrance of the fashion building, Yun Jian drove the black Lamborghini and drifted past the entrance before she slammed on the brakes and parked in front of the building. She got out of the car and walked into the building with Zhang Jifan. The surrounding people were dumbfounded. The appearance of the Lamborghini caused an uproar among the crowd. In this era, it was already very good to be able to drive a car. Although those who came to attend the auction today were wealthy and respectable bosses who stood at the pinnacle of Longmen City, it was rare to find someone who could afford a sports car. This Bolangini was a modified supercar, and it was an international limited edition. There were only a few of them in the world. Many of the people present knew about this car, but they had never had the chance to see it in real life. Now that they saw it, they couldn't help but be stunned. Which big shot had come to Longmen City? However, when Yun Jian got out of the driver's seat of the Bolangini, everyone gasped. Heavens! Could it be that this super sports car belonged to a young girl who hadn't even reached 18 yet? At this time, Yun Jian had been respectfully invited in by the receptionist at the entrance of the fashion building. The auction had yet to begin, but the people standing around were all important figures in the business world or the government. All of them were using such an occasion to find people who could get along well with them. Officials protecting each other and businessmen benefiting each other had already become a social trend. Yun Jian was particularly eye-catching standing here because the people standing here were either mature women or mature men who were all around middle-aged. She was the only one who was young. There was only one reason why the people around her were looking at her. One must have some status to enter the auction or know someone important to be brought in. The fact that this young girl could enter meant that she was somewhat capable. Yun Jian? Under everyone's gaze, an untimely low male voice suddenly rang. Turning, Yun Jian saw a face that was both unfamiliar and familiar at the same time. Zhang Taijun? Her uncle and name? She had met him once when Su Haokol was assassinated by a sniper the other day. Chapter 107. The moment Zhang Taijun saw Yun Jian, he was really stunned. He didn't have a deep impression of Yun Jian. In the past, Yun Jian was always soft and weak. Even if she was bullied, she wouldn't protest. But that day when he met Yun Jian at the hotel, she was the first to react. She pushed a few people away and dodged the sniper's bullet. At that time, Zhang Taijun was extremely shocked and frightened. Of course, at that time, he was afraid of the sniper and ran away, so he didn't have time to care about Yun Jian. Today, he was able to enter the auction venue because Zhang Taijun pulled a lot of strings to squeeze into the venue. What he did not expect, however, was that Yun Jian was here as well. She actually had a way to sneak in here. Not just anyone could enter the auction hall. With Yun Jian's identity and status, she didn't have the ability to enter this place at all. Yun Jian glanced at Zhang Taijun from the corner of her eyes and didn't say anything. In her impression, this nominal uncle of hers didn't care about her family. Moreover, when relatives gathered for dinner, he would show off in front of her family. After all, among the group of relatives, Zhang Taijun was more successful. He started his own business from scratch and finally became a small boss. Among the group of relatives and friends, he felt that he was different and had a sense of superiority. When Qin Yiru borrowed money from his family, Zhang Taijun was very embarrassed and fanned the flames. He was very narrow-minded. Yun Jian, why are you here? Although Zhang Taijun and Yun Jian were relatives, they weren't close. He even called her by her full name. Zhang Taijun obviously didn't believe that Yun Jian had the ability to enter such a high-end venue. He directly assumed that Yun Jian had sneaked in from some small corner of the fashion building. His tone wasn't very polite. And without waiting for Yun Jian to reply, Zhang Taijun frowned and continued to shout at Yun Jian in the tone of an elder, "There's going to be an auction here. The auction is about to start." How did you sneak in here? You should be more sensible. You have to know your limits even though you're already so old. This is not a place where you can come and go as you please. If there's nothing else, then hurry up and leave. He scolded Yun Jian for a while, but Zhang Taijun wanted her to leave as soon as possible. This was not a place for a child like her. Zhang Jifan, who was standing behind Yun Jian, pursed his lips and rolled his eyes at Zhang Taijun in disdain. Yun Jian raised her brow and didn't argue with Zhang Taijun. Since Zhang Taijun would also appear at the auction, some things could no longer be hidden. She would never give up the store that she had set her eyes on because of some irrelevant people or things. This was not her style. Yun Jian's pure pink cheeks became moist as she revealed a charming and beautiful smile. She said to Zhang Taijun, "I'm here to participate in the auction." Nonsense. Zhang Taijun's face sank. His face turned gloomy. This is not a place where a child like you should come to. Hurry up and leave before the auction starts. Just as Zhang Taijun said this, the middle-aged man standing next to Zhang Taijun tugged at Zhang Taijun's coat and pointed at the door. A group of people looked towards the door. They saw a group of middle-aged men in suits walking in from outside the door. Each of them had an extraordinary aura. Standing at the front was Mayor Gu, whom Yun Jian had met at Su Haokol's birthday party. At this moment, Mayor Gu was surrounded by a large group of people who were fawning over him. The moment Zhang Taijun saw Mayor Gu, he couldn't care less about Yun Jian. He suppressed his emotions and walked towards Mayor Gu with the middle-aged man who had tugged at his coat just now. This was the reason why Zhang Taijun had tried so hard to sneak into the auction. He had been waiting for Mayor Gu. Naturally, he had something to ask of Mayor Gu. Mayor Gu, who was surrounded by a group of people, turned his head and accidentally saw Yun Jian, who was particularly eye-catching. Mayor Gu pushed through the crowd and walked over. Seeing that Mayor Gu had actually seen him, Zhang Taijun stood still and didn't dare to lift his feet. He held his breath. Mayor Gu had actually noticed him. Zhang Taijun suddenly looked like he was flattered. When Mayor Gu brushed past him to greet Yun Jian, however, Zhang Taijun felt like he had been struck by a bolt of lightning on a sunny day. Chapter 108. Mayor Gu was the mayor of Longmen City and held the highest position in the city. Under normal circumstances, only others would try to curry favor with him. Mayor Gu himself didn't like the bribery between bureaucrats, so he didn't pay much attention to others. What did they see today? Mayor Gu personally greeting and befriending a teenage girl? Who was this girl? How could Mayor Gu value her so much? Zhang Taijun watched the scene unfolding before him with a face that looked like he had eaten dog poop. Yun Jian knew Mayor Gu. More importantly, Mayor Gu seemed to be friendly to Yun Jian. He was shocked and regretful. Recalling what he had said just now, he felt like he was showing off in front of an expert. Yun Jian was not reserved like others when she faced Mayor Gu. She smiled easily and looked natural as she pressed her lips together and said, "Yes, what a coincidence. It is. Girl, are you here for the auction too? Do you want to go into the hall with me now?" Mayor Gu invited with a squint. Mayor Gu might look aloof from worldly affairs, but he had been in the government for so many years and had successfully held the mayor's position for so many years. Other things aside, he had the ability to judge people. Despite her young age, Mayor Gu had to pay attention to her based on this fact alone. Even the mafia boss had to bow down to Yun Jian. In short, even Snake Lizard had to listen to Yun Jian. Was Yun Jian really just an ordinary girl? Mayor Gu rationally chose to stand with Yun Jian. His instinct told him that this girl was not ordinary. When the crowd heard Mayor Gu's invitation to Yun Jian, there was another uproar. Yun Jian would not reject having Mayor Gu leading the team. It would save her a lot of trouble. She nodded and said, "All right." Yun Jian then gestured to Zhang Jifan, indicating for him to enter the hall behind her. Zhang Jifan was dumbfounded. He had never thought that an insignificant person like him would be invited by Mayor Gu one day. This was all thanks to Yun Jian. Just as Yun Jian and Mayor Gu were about to enter the auction hall, Zhang Tiejun's shameless voice rang out, "Wait!" Zhang Taijun ran over and stopped in front of Mayor Gu. Although he didn't understand why Mayor Gu knew Yun Jian and valued her so much, now was not the time to talk about it. Mayor Gu, hello. I'm Xiao Jian's uncle, you can call me Xiao Zhang." As Zhang Taijun spoke, he pointed out his relationship with Yun Jian. Then he continued, "It's like this. My friend and I want to apply for approval for our recent cooperation." Zhang Taijun wanted to make use of Yun Jian's relationship to talk to Mayor Gu, so that he could finish his vicious task. But before he could finish speaking, Yun Jian beat him to it. Yun Jian watched as Mayor Gu introduced Zhang Taijun word by word. She smiled and said, "He is indeed my mother's sister's husband." There was an inexplicable estrangement in his words. That one sentence sealed Zhang Tiejun's fate. Mayor Gu understood what Yun Jian meant. If they were relatives, how could they be close if they did not even address each other as uncle? Mayor Gu waved his hand. Since Zhang Taijun was not someone Yun Jian cared about, what right did he have to give him face? "Hey, let's talk next time. I have something urgent to discuss with the girl." Mayor Gu waved at Zhang Taijun. Then, he followed Yun Jian into the auction hall. Only Zhang Taijun, who was exasperated, was left with a sour expression. There was only one word left in his mind: it's over. Chapter 109. Even so, Zhang Taijun still shamelessly followed the crowd into the auction hall. A person like Zhang Taijun naturally wouldn't be here to buy properties or shops. He was just here to join in the fun, and his target today was only Mayor Gu. However, what happened next was completely unexpected. Yun Jian was already sitting in the VIP seats in the auction hall with Mayor Gu. She was only qualified to sit in the VIP seats because she was accompanied by Mayor Gu. Zhang Jifan was flattered. He sat in the VIP seats and forcefully suppressed his nervous emotions that were about to burst out. He pretended to be calm, but in fact, he was so excited that he couldn't express it with words. When the guests were all seated, the auction officially began. The host of the auction this time was an enchanting woman. This woman swayed her butt, showing off her pair of white and slender legs that were exposed. She stood in the middle of the host. "Honorable guests, greetings to you all. I'm the host of this auction. You can call me Big Sisterly. Long story short, let's get to the main topic. This auction will still follow the old rules. All the auction locations will be quoted after the auction starts, and the old rule of the highest bidder wins." Big Sisterly swayed her but as she walked. She used a pleasant voice to say beautiful words, but it was enough to make some of the men present addicted to the sight. Fortunately, Big Sisterly wasn't here to show off. After a few words, the auction officially began. At the beginning of the auction, the shops that were sold at a cheaper price and were not in a good location. Yun Jian naturally wasn't interested. Mayor Gu, on the other hand, was sizing her up all the time. He even asked a few irrelevant questions from time to time. "Little girl, where did you go to school?" Yun Jian continued to smile and replied him, "Dragon Gate No. 1 High School." "Oh." Mayor Gu made a strange sound and laughed. He said to Yun Jian, "Then we're really fated. My grandson is also studying at Longmen No. 1 Middle School. I don't know if you've heard of that brat's name." At this point, Mayor Gu did not care whether Yun Jian was interested in this matter or not. He directly introduced his grandson to Yun Jian. There was a hint of pride in his tone, but also a hint of helplessness. "That brat is called Gu Heng. If you meet him in No. 1 Middle School, don't go easy on him in the future. Teach him a good lesson for me." From Mayor Gu's tone, it was obvious that he wanted to build a good relationship with Yun Jian. Zhang Jifan, who sat beside Yun Jian, was stupefied once more when he heard that a prominent figure like Mayor Gu was trying to curry favor with them. Yun Jian, she had such great ability. Yun Jian merely curled her lips into a faint smile and did not directly reply to Mayor Gu's words. She was stunned. Mayor Gu had mentioned his grandson and even asked her to teach him a lesson the next time she met him, not to be soft-hearted. It was really strange to have a grandfather like Mayor Gu. Suddenly, Yun Jian cast a sidelong glance at the auction stage. She pursed her lips slightly and spat out a line of words from her red lips. It's finally here. The area that she was preparing to bid on was finally being auctioned off. Mayor Gu was stunned. What? However, the latter half of Yun Jian's sentence shocked Mayor Gu for a long time. Yun Jian leaned back in her seat lazily and looked at Sister Li, who was speaking eloquently on the auction stage. Her eyes did not look at Mayor Gu. I want this shop. Mayor Gu followed Yun Jian's gaze and listened to Sister Li's explanation. It was a very good area and the price was very high. Ordinary people could not afford this piece of land. However, from Yun Jian's tone, she wanted to bid for this area. After the auction was over, he would be considered a person who had gained a lot of knowledge. Perhaps he could even brag about it to his friends and relatives. 4 million. The hot-tempered big boss had begun to blow his beard and glare. Gritting his teeth, he fiercely quoted a price. This was his bottom line. 401 million. The big boss called Emo Shirlong was still competing, but his expression was not any better. Spending 4 million just to buy a store was naturally not worth it, so the hot-tempered big boss had to give up. I'll give it to you, give it to you. Emo Shirlong, don't let me get the chance to deal with you next time. The hot-tempered big boss yelled at Emo Shirlong. This old man will wait. Emo Shirlong snorted coldly. Finally, a calm expression appeared on his face. Although the price had been raised quite a bit, he finally got it. After all, other than the hot-tempered big boss, no one else present could compete with him. Just as elder Sister Li smiled and was about to count down the last 3 seconds. Chapter 111. 1401 million. As soon as Yun Jian said that, everyone was shocked. They all looked at the little girl sitting next to Mayor Gu in disbelief. They thought that the little girl was only qualified to enter the auction because she knew Mayor Gu. Who would have thought that she would bid and increase the price by 10 million? The crowd was in an uproar and focused all their attention on Yun Jian. At that moment, Zhang Taijun, who was sitting respectfully in the corner, suddenly tensed up. He glared at Yun Jian with wide eyes, his expression complicated. In a large-scale auction like this, if one could not pay the price after bidding, they would have to bear legal responsibility. Therefore, since Yun Jian had the courage to bid, it meant that she could definitely afford it. God, more than 10 million. Zhang Taijun was trembling all over at that moment. All of his family's passbooks added up to less than 200,000. His family's wealth was enough to make people envious in Xinjiang town, but he did not expect that someone would spend more than 10 million to buy a storefront at an auction. The most important thing was that this person who made everyone dumbfounded was his niece in name. Moreover, she was the poorest among all his relatives and friends in the family. Cough, cough, cough. Sister Li could not react for a long time. Fortunately, she was an old hand at auctions and knew how to ease the atmosphere. 1401 million, is there anyone who wants to bid higher? Sister Li first tried to ease the atmosphere. Of course, many of the people present did not even have 1401 million. Under such circumstances, who would continue to bid higher? Sister Li immediately started the countdown. 1401 million going once, 1401 million going twice, 1401 million going thrice, sold. Dongchun Harbor Store No. 1 was now completely under Yun Jian's name. Yun Jian showed a smile that did not match her age. It was as comfortable as a spring breeze. Dongchun Harbor Store No. 1 was originally auctioned for more than 10 million. It was definitely not a good deal. However, the person who bought this storefront was Yun Jian, so the situation was completely different. One had to know that she, Yun Jian, would never do a business where she would have to pay for herself if there was no profit to be made. Of course, she didn't want to compete with that group of people, so she directly raised the price by 1 degree and bought the store that was going to be auctioned. Because of this price, the others would definitely not raise the price anymore. Yun Jian paid all the fees in one go and signed a transfer contract with the owner of the previous store. The store was officially included in her name. By the time he was done, it was already late. After leaving the auction house, Mayor Gu tried to get close to Yun Jian. His intuition told him that this girl was destined to do great things. When Yun Jian left, Mayor Gu shouted after her, "Little girl. If you need anything in the future, feel free to look for me. If you can't find me, you can look for my grandson, Gu Heng. Let that brat pass the message." At this time, Yun Jian had already walked quite a distance, but she still faintly smiled. Obviously, she heard Mayor Gu's voice. She walked over and got into the Lamborghini sports car. After Zhang Jifan sat down, she stepped on the accelerator and the car sped out like a flash of lightning. Zhang Taijun had already rushed out as fast as he could, but he still could not catch up with Yun Jian's pace in time. His whole body was trembling and trembling. He did not catch up. He was screwed. This was Zhang Taijun's first thought. At this moment, if Yun Jian was standing in front of him, as long as she forgave him, even if he had to kneel down, it would be worth it. For the first time, Zhang Taijun felt that he had failed. He finally understood why Yun Jian was admired by Mayor Gu. Because she had the capital. She had the ability. Chapter 112. Returning the car keys to CE, Yun Jian went back to her room and logged into the web with her laptop to contact Alluring Demon. Alluring Demon was also her subordinate. Unlike Snake, Lizard and Tiger, Leopard, Alluring Demon was in charge of legitimate forces and was involved in all aspects of business. Now that the storefront was settled, the next step was to decorate it. Yun Jian had handed the task to Zhang Jifan. Of course, it would take some time, at least a few months. Yun Jian wanted to obtain the channel to import cars into Country Z's Longmen City through Alluring Demon. Alluring Demon was indeed easy to handle. She had agreed to it just as Yun Jian mentioned it to her and had asked Yun Jian to leave the address. After contacting the dealer of imported cars, they would send the cars over after the storefront was renovated. There would be no shortage of imported cars and domestic cars. Once the matter was settled, Yun Jian fell asleep. It was a dreamless night. Early the next morning, Yun Jian received a message from Snake. Lizard when she came back from her workout. The phone she was holding was newly bought by Snake. Lizard to facilitate their communication. In her past life, Yun Jian had a phone too, but she changed her number frequently to prevent anyone from tracking her through the system. Now that Yun Jian was reborn and her residence was stable, there were no enemies from her past life who came looking for her. Naturally, she did not have to worry about her whereabouts being exposed due to her phone number. Snake. Lizard's message was simple. It was to ask Yun Jian out to meet her at a coffee shop. Yun Jian went to the meeting as scheduled. Snake. Lizard was already waiting for her on a chair beside a table in the coffee shop. When she saw Yun Jian coming over, she could not help waving her hand. What's wrong? Yun Jian sat opposite Snake. Lizard, her fingers brushing the table lightly as she asked. Snake. Lizard lowered her voice and told her, Sister Jian, I have some personal matters to attend to. I have to leave for a while. Ever since Snake. Lizard came to Longmen City, she had been calling Yun Jian, Sister Jian, like Zhang Jifan and others. Yun Jian didn't think it was inappropriate. Okay. Yun Jian nodded in acquiescence. Although Snake. Lizard was her subordinate, it was her freedom to leave for a while. This was something that Yun Jian would never force. Also, there is one thing I need your help with. Snake. Lizard took a sip of the coffee in her teacup and said to Yun Jian. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. In fact, she had already guessed something when Snake. Lizard spoke. The mafia boss of Longmen City, Su Zetian, is a member of the Kosha mercenaries. He's holding an underground tournament at Longtu Mountain a week later and has made a bet with the foreigners. Initially, Su Zetian had requested support from the organization to help him win the tournament. I came to Longmen City using this as an excuse. Now that I'm leaving, I hope Sister Jian can help with the tournament. Snake. Lizard looked at Yun Jian and enunciated each word clearly. Her identity was not exposed to Su Zetian and his gang, or he would be scared half to death. A veteran of the Kosha mercenaries had come to Longmen City to help him in the tournament. To the public, Snake. Lizard had used this as an excuse to come to Longmen City to look for Yun Jian. Of course, Snake. Lizard had left and could not find anyone to help Su Zetian win the tournament, so the first person that came to her mind was Yun Jian. Su Zetian did not have much status in the Kosha mercenaries, but he was still a member. Okay, Yun Jian agreed with a smile. She agreed to help. If Su Zetian was just a member of the Kosha mercenaries, Yun Jian might not have agreed to help. After all, she was a global leader in her previous life, the big boss of the Kosha mercenaries. She was not at all interested in the petty squabbles of such insignificant people. However, Su Zetian was the father of her brother's best friend. Chapter 113. Snake. Lizard left as soon as she was done talking to Yun Jian. Yun Jian returned to her school life as well. During the self-study session on Monday night, the homeroom teacher returned to the class after the school meeting and announced something that all the teachers and students were looking forward to, the autumn outing. Jianghu was the best junior high school in the city. It was also an aristocratic school that balanced work and rest. First of all, most of the students in the school were from rich families, the majority of them were rich and powerful. Coming to Jianghu for these rich students, it was not enough to have a boring academic life. Therefore, the school had set up many activities. The spring outing was an event that most schools would organize once a year, while the autumn outing was only held in Jianghu among all the junior high schools in Longmen City. It was the end of October. When Teacher Yu announced to the class that the school was going to hold an autumn outing, all the students in the class cheered excitedly. Wow! The autumn outing is finally here. Chen Sini turned to shake Yun Jian's hand happily, almost stretching herself into a straight line in her excitement. Yun Jian only had a slight smile on her face, making it impossible to tell if she was happy or worried. In spite of it, Chen Sini, who was too excited to notice Yun Jian's current state. She was bouncing up and down in excitement. All the students in the class were in a state of excitement. It was only when Miss Yu clapped her hands to signal for the class to quieten down that they quieted down. The autumn outing was here. It was good news, but what everyone was looking forward to was, where would they go for the autumn outing this year? Therefore, when Miss Yu clapped her hands again to signal for silence, everyone looked at her with bated breath. Cough, I know how everyone is feeling now, but don't get too excited, Miss Yu said jokingly before regaining her composure. The autumn outing is next Monday morning, so when you return to school this weekend, you can bring the snacks that you want to eat over. The location of the autumn outing is a scenic forest park in the suburbs. The bus fare and entrance fee are 30 yuan in total. Don't forget to bring the money over when you return to school this weekend. There's also an open space in the forest park where you can organize a barbecue activity. Those who can afford it can bring their barbecue tools and ingredients over. The autumn outing this time should be attended by all the teachers and students of the school. If your family can't make it, you can also apply not to go. Teacher Yu explained everything in one breath. Of course, after the students heard these words, their hearts began to stir. Most of the students who studied here came from rich families, so there were very few students who didn't participate in the spring and autumn excursions, which required them to pay for themselves. Alright, stop quarreling. The evening self-study session should continue as per normal. I'll say this up front. If anyone continues to quarrel in the self-study session, then don't even think about going to the autumn outing next week. Teacher Yu instructed the students to calm down. But at this moment, how could the students still calm down? Other than those whose families could not afford to go, the other students were all in high spirits. However, with Teacher Yu's harsh words in front of them, the students didn't dare to make any noise. Whoosh, Qinsini, who was sitting in front of Yunjian, suddenly threw a ball of paper to Yunjian. If there was someone behind them, they would definitely see that Yunjian's eyes were fixed on the textbook on the table. She stretched out her hand to catch the ball of paper without even looking at it. Chapter 114. Yunjian was automatically categorized as one of the students who had good grades but came from a poor family. Qinsini didn't mean any harm. Instead, she just wanted to help Yunjian. She thought that Yunjian's family was really poor. However, Qinsini wasn't good at expressing herself, so her words were more straightforward. Yunjian pursed her lips and wrote 3 words on the paper that Qinsini threw at her: "I will go." When she was done, she crumpled the paper into a ball and was about to throw it to Qinsini when she heard Lu Rongrong, who was sitting not far away, complaining to Teacher Yu openly. "Sir, I saw Qinsini sneakily tossing a note to Yunjian just now. It's class time now. Even if everyone's excited about the autumn outing, we can't forget the class rules. We're not allowed to toss notes in class." It was apparent that Lu Rongrong happened to see Qinsini tossing the paper ball at Yunjian just now. Lu Rongrong was shocked. Yunjian was just looking at her textbook, but she reached out and held the note in her hand. However, she didn't think too much about it. She snorted in her heart. What was so surprising about that? It was just a coincidence. Zhang Xiaofeng kept chasing after Yunjian, calling her master and asking her to teach him martial arts. However, in Lu Rongrong's eyes, it was just Yunjian's little trick to pretend to be cool. TSK, who was she trying to show off to? Although Teacher Yu was a newly appointed teacher who had just graduated from university, what she hated the most was the sneaky actions of her students during class. Therefore, when Lu Rongrong said that, Teacher Yu immediately walked over to Yunjian. "It's class time now, and you're passing notes? Do you still want to go to the autumn outing next week?" Teacher Yu stood beside Yunjian and Qinsini and said aggressively. Teacher Yu was a very disciplined person. She would never look down on a student or take special care of a student because of their family background. It was precisely because Teacher Yu was very disciplined that as long as a student made a mistake, Teacher Yu would definitely punish them severely when he found out. Teacher Yu had always been very strict when it came to such matters. "Teacher, I saw Qinsini throw the note to Yunjian with my own eyes. It must still be on the table now," Lu Rongrong added arrogantly. She had been unhappy with Yunjian for a long time. However, Zhang Xiaofeng and Qinsini were always protecting Yunjian, so she didn't have a chance to do anything. Today, her chance came today. How dare Qinsini and Yunjian pass notes right under the homeroom teacher's nose? Wasn't this the same as seeking death? Ha! Therefore, Lu Rongrong immediately complained to Teacher Yu. Qinsini was caught red-handed by Teacher Yu. She hated Lu Rongrong so much that she gritted her teeth, but she was also afraid of being scolded by the teacher. After all, she was usually a good student who didn't get scolded by teachers. Therefore, she lowered her head and didn't even dare to look at Teacher Yu. Seeing this, Lu Rongrong became even more arrogant. She looked at Yunjian provocatively. However, Yunjian reached out and scratched her head. Then, she looked at Teacher Yu and shrugged. She didn't feel humble at all. "We didn't pass any note." Then, she looked at Lu Rongrong and blinked. "Student, could it be that you're old and dim-sighted?" She actually said that she was presbyopic. Lu Rongrong almost exploded in anger. She ran down from her seat and went to Yunjian's desk. She started to flip through Yunjian's textbooks in front of Teacher Yu. "Teacher, it's here. I saw it just now." Yunjian hid the note in the textbooks on her desk. Lu Rongrong said as she flipped through the pile of textbooks on Yunjian's desk. In the end, even the last book was flipped from cover to cover, but there wasn't a trace of the note in front of everyone's eyes. Lu Rongrong was dumbfounded. When the whole class looked at Lu Rongrong again, their expressions immediately changed. Chapter 115. Where's the note? Lu Rongrong, where did they send the note? Don't tell me, you ate it? Huh. Hee hee ha 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 ha. Lu Rongrong's eyesight must be going bad. Ha ha ha. A bunch of students in the class couldn't hold it in anymore and started yelling noisily. Perhaps it was because they had heard the news about the autumn outing, but they hadn't calmed down yet. Now that Lu Rongrong was in trouble, the whole class took the opportunity to make a ruckus. Lu Rongrong's gloomy face instantly turned cold. A haze covered her entire body. She trembled and felt very wronged. She clearly saw Chen Sini pass the note to Yunjian. How could it be gone just like that? Lu Rongrong, you're framing your classmate for passing notes. What else do you have to say? Teacher Yu frowned with a trace of displeasure on her face. As mentioned earlier, Teacher Yu was a very disciplined person. She especially hated students who did things under her nose. Of course, at the same time, she also disliked students who liked to report fake news and frame their classmates. It could only be said that Lu Rongrong had stepped on Teacher Yu's minefield. Teacher, I really did see the two of them passing notes. Lu Rongrong was unrepentant and even raised her voice to argue. Get out. Stand outside as punishment. Don't attend the 2 periods of self-study in the evening. You're not allowed to enter the classroom during this period. Teacher, you didn't have the patience to listen to Lu Rongrong's nonsense. She pointed at the door and growled at Lu Rongrong. Harmony was the most important thing in the class. Unity and mutual help were a good expression of the class atmosphere. However, Teacher Yu was naturally angry when Lu Rongrong randomly accused Chen Sini and Yunjian of not paying attention in class. Lu Rongrong was so angry that she was about to explode. However, she didn't dare to do anything in front of the teacher. She shuffled out and glared fiercely at Yunjian before she left. It was as if she was telling Yunjian, "This is not over." Yunjian returned a smile, but it only made Lu Rongrong angrier. Okay, continue with your self-study. Teacher Yu waved her hand and walked away. The first period of self-study was over. Lu Rongrong was still standing outside the door as punishment. Teacher Yu had returned to the office. Many students in the class were active outside the classroom, so there were not many people inside. Zhang Xiaofeng went to Yunjian while he and Chen Sini looked at Yunjian with admiration. It was Chen Sini who asked softly, Jian, how did you manage to hide the note from the teacher's eyes? Oh, where did you hide the note? Zhang Xiaofeng looked at Yunjian expectantly as well. Is that's, teacher, that's S's have. Spreading the note out in front of Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Sini, Yunjian's lips curled into a smile. It's here. Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Sini were stunned by Yunjian's action. It was then that both of them recalled the scene just now. When Yunjian stood up to refute that she did not pass the note, she had scratched her head. Could it be that at that time, she had hidden the note in her hair bun? At that time, she was actually able to hide the note in her hair in front of the whole class without leaving a trace. How did she do it? Could it be that she knew magic? Master, you're amazing. Zhang Xiaofeng's mouth was agape and it took him a long time to speak with admiration. Yunjian, on the other hand, had a small smile on her face without saying anything. As a secret agent in her past life, she was the best at hiding all sorts of dangerous weapons all over her body. She could walk, run, jump, and other movements without being noticed. Back then, she had hidden all sorts of razor blades in her hair. Including under her tongue, all over her body, as long as it could be hidden, there would be hidden weapons everywhere. Chapter 116. Heh. Lu Rongrong was so smug just now and wanted to complain about us to the teacher. She's the one who's suffering now. She's asking for trouble and reaping what she sowed. Chen Sini snickered happily and gave Yunjian a thumbs up. My Jian is the best. Yunjian squinted and returned a smile. Looking at the lively and adorable Chen Sini, she was reminded of Lu Fian, who was still in Xinjiang town. Lu Fian was the first friend who treated her sincerely since her rebirth. She wondered if Lu Fian was doing well in Xinjiang town now. There was also the basketball team. They would meet again a year later. A week passed quickly. Yun Jian slept in class now. Due to her excellent results, the teachers did not bother with her. Perhaps when she had just been reborn a few days ago, she listened to the teacher in class without being distracted. Now, however, she could no longer listen attentively in class if she had to face the questions that she already knew with a youthful and hot-blooded attitude. When she returned home on Friday, Zhang Xiaofeng did not forget to remind Yun Jian, "Master, let's meet at the foot of Longtu Mountain tomorrow night. Remember, it's 6 in the evening. Don't be late." 6:00 was the start of the tournament. Yun Jian nodded and left the school gate with a backpack slung over her shoulder. She was not going home. Instead, she was going for a walk in Longmen City suburbs. The evening sky was beautiful. The rosy clouds that reflected from the horizon cast a dim yellow hue over the land, like a girl who covered her face shyly, barely visible. Longmen City was a coastal city, and its city was the closest to the sea. Walking past the rows of downtown, Yun Jian came to a tranquil shore. There was no beach here, but the waves that crashed on the shore gave her a sense of tranquility that came from the bottom of her heart. Yun Jian sat down along the shore and looked up at the yellow sky, deep in thought. Life was so good now. She was carefree and did not have to worry about being assassinated or facing the pressure of death at any moment. She did not know how long such peaceful days could last. But she knew that from tomorrow onwards, there would be another battle. The challenge tournament would be her new starting point in this circle. Smelling the warm and comfortable light of the evening, Yun Jian sat in the same place. She raised her hand and stretched, with a faint smile on her face. Suddenly, a fair and flawless hand grasped Yun Jian's wrist. Yun Jian was stunned. Someone was actually able to get close to her without her noticing. She glanced over and saw Si Yi's sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and flawless cheeks. "Why are you here?" Yun Jian wanted to pull her wrist back from Si Yi's warm hand, but she realized that his strength was not as strong as hers. "Guess." Si Yi's clear voice came out from his thin lips. He moved closer to Yun Jian, and his exquisite face was even closer to hers. His breath was almost on Yun Jian's face. Si Yi's large hand was still tightly grasping Yun Jian's small hand. Yun Jian's body shrank back. She had never been so intimate with a man before. She leaned back and tried even harder to break free. Si Yi's large hand held onto her wrist firmly, causing Yun Jian to frown slightly. "Let go first." Yun Jian used her other hand to push his large hand away. "No." Si Yi tightened his grip. Yun Jian's small hand was very smooth and delicate. It was even better than the tender skin of a newborn baby. Yun Jian pursed her red lips. She used her other hand to hit Si Yi's head in an attempt to free his hand. However, Si Yi did not let go. He held onto her wrist and tilted his head to the side to avoid her. At the same time, Yun Jian stretched out her leg to kick Si Yi's leg. However, Yun Jian did not expect that Si Yi would not let go. Instead, he pulled her into his embrace and the two of them rolled around the edge of the cliff. When they stopped, Si Yi had one hand on Yun Jian's wrist and the other hand on Yun Jian's chest to guard against Yun Jian's attack. At this moment, it just so happened to be on Yun Jian's chest. On her chest. The two of them were also in a position where one of them was on top of the other. Neither of them had expected this to happen. Chapter 117. It was obvious that Si Yi did not expect things to turn out this way. His earlobes flushed at the corners of his handsome face. Yun Jian's body had developed very well. Although she was only 15 years old, her twin peaks were already slender and elegant. He could clearly feel the softness of the young girl's ample bosom. Yun Jian's red lips widened. While Si Yi was still in a daze, she smoothly pushed him away and stood up. Her heart skipped a beat, and an unknown feeling spread through her body. Yun Jian stood up and walked away. Having lived 2 lives, she was fearless in battle and could kill without being noticed. However, this was the first time she had encountered something like this. She had only taken 2 steps when Siyi's tall figure blocked Yun Jian's path. He tilted his head slightly, revealing his handsome face to Yun Jian. His earlobes turned red, and he awkwardly said, "Ahem, sorry. I didn't do it on purpose." Yun Jian slowly came back to her senses. Her rosy cheeks were unnatural. In the next second, she pretended as though nothing had happened and said to Ce, "Why were you looking for me?" After interacting with him for the past few days, Yun Jian could confirm that Ce was the kind of person who wouldn't visit a temple for no reason. If he didn't have anything to say, he wouldn't even waste his breath talking to you. Ce didn't hesitate. He immediately knitted his good-looking brows and moved his thin lips. "Come with me." Yun Jian nodded. Thus, Yun Jian followed Ce to the side of the road. Ce's personal Lamborghini was parked by the side of the road. Yun Jian sat in the passenger seat of the Lamborghini. Ce took out a box from the back seat and handed it to Yun Jian. Yun Jian's eyes widened when she saw it, and her eyelashes fluttered twice. A sandalwood box. Ce narrowed his eyes as he observed Yun Jian's every move. "You know about it?" Ce asked suspiciously when he saw something strange in Yun Jian's eyes. Yun Jian was stunned. She turned her head and returned the sandalwood box to Ce. She pretended as though this was the first time she had seen it. "What do I know? I just thought that this box was very pretty. I didn't react in time. This box must be very expensive, right?" She had almost exposed her emotions. The sandalwood box's influence on her was too great. This box was the cause of her rebirth. It was also the indirect cause of her brother's death. That was why she nearly lost control of her emotions when she saw the sandalwood box just now. But why did Ce ask her such a question? Could it be that he could tell that she knew something about the sandalwood's way? Ce narrowed his eyes. He stared at Yun Jian for a while before he finally looked away and pretended not to notice anything. To prevent Ce from getting suspicious, Yun Jian asked him, "Hey, why are you asking me this?" Nothing." Ce's eyes lit up. He pursed his lips and started the sports car. Chapter 118. After the boy with dyed blonde hair opened his mouth, the group of boys and girls around him laughed. They were obviously disdainful of Zhang Xiaofeng, a rich young master, having a weak little girl like Yun Jian as his master. "Shoo, shoo, shoo. Guheng, what do you know? My master is not an ordinary person." Zhang Xiaofeng waved his hand at Guheng and snorted. He was still on Yun Jian's side. "Guheng." Yun Jian did not say anything. Even if this group of people were talking about her, she felt that there was no need to speak about unimportant things. But when she heard the 2 words, Guheng, she could not help but take another look at the boy with dyed blonde hair called Guheng. Could it really be such a coincidence? This Guheng in front of her was Mayor Gu's grandson? Suddenly, Yun Jian remembered Mayor Gu's warning that if she met his grandson, she must not be soft-hearted and teach him a lesson on his behalf. Combined with the fact that this Guheng had dyed blonde hair and was wearing a pair of ripped pants and a flowery dress that he thought was fashionable, Yun Jian felt relieved. So even Mayor Gu himself could not control his grandson's rebellious behavior? Boys and girls at this age had a very strong rebellious mentality. Yun Jian had lived in a dangerous environment in her previous life. Her only wish every day was to live until the next day. In that kind of environment, she had never experienced the rebellious period that normal children should have. Your master is not a normal person. How could she be different? Hee, she doesn't have any more arms or legs than we do. What can she teach you? Guheng did not have any bad intentions. He just wanted to show off in front of the girls and show off his power. When Zhang Xiaofeng heard Guheng slandering his master, he immediately went against his brother, Gu Heng. The two of them clicked their tongues and only stopped arguing when it was almost time for the competition to start. The group of people rushed up the mountain noisily. As they rushed up the mountain, they could still hear Gu Heng's arrogant voice. My grandpa has some connections with Longmen City's mafia boss. I heard that the mafia boss has sent a very young woman to fight against a foreigner who almost made it into the international tournament tonight. Tonight's tournament will be very exciting. Gu Heng was at the front of the group, talking incessantly along the way. This group of boys and girls just happened to like listening to him talk about these things, and all of them listened with great interest. A very young woman fighting such a skilled foreigner. Doesn't that mean our mafia boss of Longmen City will lose for sure? A girl asked timidly. Hearing that someone had agreed with him, Gu Heng became even more pleased with himself. He spread the news that he had heard through the grapevine with a sense of superiority. It was as if he was the organizer and witness of this competition. Yun Jian, on the other hand, was slowly walking up the mountain side by side with Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Sini. Gu Heng and the rest did not know that snake lizard, who was supposed to fight the foreigner who was rumored to be very skilled, had already left. The one who replaced her was Yun Jian. However, Yun Jian did not feel anything when she heard Gu Heng and the rest's chatter. She merely followed the group quietly and came to the mountainside of Longmen Mountain. We're here. It's here. Zhang Xiaofeng could not help shouting excitedly. Right in front of them, a circular building that looked like a huge football field came into view. Chapter 119. The only arena in Longmen City so far was set up here. Why was Longmen City's Longtu Mountain famous? This huge arena must have played a huge role. People who came to Longtu Mountain to train their bodies would definitely come to the arena to take a look and rest for a while at the mountainside. Of course, Longtu Mountain's scenery was beautiful and had a hint of nature to it. It was a pity that it was evening and they were at the mountainside of Longtu Mountain, so Yun Jian did not get to see the beautiful scenery. Instead, she saw many common flowers and plants along the way. Let's go in. It was not Zhang Xiaofeng's first time here, so he took the lead with a chuckle. Boys like Zhang Xiaofeng who paid special attention to fights often came to watch the arena matches. When they came to watch the matches, they did not forget to call the girls over. His purpose was naturally to show off in front of the girls and say a few professional words to show that he was knowledgeable. As expected, Yun Jian could hear Gu Heng's bragging and the girls' admiring voices along the way. Yun Jian merely rolled her eyes and smiled helplessly. There was a group of men standing at the entrance of the arena today, all of them dressed in black and looking solemn. This group of people gave off the feeling of gangsters in movies, making people shudder at the sight of them. Zhang Xiaofeng led the way to the arena, but he was stopped before he could enter. Everyone knew that today's challenge tournament was actually a bet between a mafia boss and a foreigner. Therefore, not just anyone could come and watch the battle. Xiaofeng, move aside. I'll do it. Gu Heng finally had some practical use now. He walked up and looked at the group of men in front of him with heavy expressions. He swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva and gave them a sideways glance. In an instant, he regained his arrogance and said to them, I'm Mayor Gu's grandson. We're here to watch today's tournament. At Gu Heng's words, the wild-looking man in front of him stepped aside. The group entered the arena smoothly. Gu Heng breathed a sigh of relief and felt smug again. Wow, Gu Heng, you're amazing. You can even bring us in. I thought we wouldn't be able to come in. The girls began to boast about Gu Heng again. It made Gu Heng feel smug again. Jian, let's sit over there. Chen Sini held Yun Jian's hand and walked to an empty spectator stand. There were not many people on the spectator stand at the arena. There were people blocking the entrance. The bet today was not for ordinary people but for the mafia boss and a foreigner, so ordinary people could not enter. There was no lack of spectator stands, of course. Yun Jian and Chen Sini sat on the spectator stand. On the other side, Gu Heng was still busy bragging. He's a person. A mafia boss's man. Calm. Host. Host. Oh. That's amazing. The crowd gasped again when they heard that. At that moment, the crowd saw the beautiful silhouette who was sitting next to Chinsini on the spectator stand suddenly walk down the spectator stand. She walked straight to the middle-aged man whom they were talking about, the man whom the mafia boss valued the most. Hey, why is she going to that person? Does she know the mafia boss's underling? Chapter 120. Before Snake. Lizard left, she said goodbye to Su Zetian. She directly asked Yun Jian to replace her in tonight's challenge tournament. When Su Zetian first heard the news, he was completely stunned, but in the end, he acquiesced. After all, he had no right to refuse the decision made by the Kosha mercenary superiors. It was already good enough that the superiors sent someone to help him. Thinking about it from another angle, what if this thin and weak girl really had the ability to win for him? After all, the people sent by the Kosha mercenaries were not to be underestimated. Their strength was extraordinary. Yun Jian had met Su Zetian's subordinate before, so he naturally recognized her. Su Zetian's subordinate was called Duan Lei. Duan Lei was tall and strong with a strong physique. He was the second in command of Su Zetian's Dragon Head gang. Miss Yun. Duan Lei respectfully greeted Yun Jian the moment he saw her. Although Yun Jian was very young, Duan Lei was still very respectful to her. After all, if Yun Jian dared to participate in today's challenge tournament, it meant that she definitely had some skills. Yun Jian nodded indifferently, then said to Duan Lei in a low voice, "I'm with my friend. I'll come over when the challenge tournament starts." After that, Yun Jian turned and walked away. She only came over to greet him and tell him that she had arrived. On the other side, Gu Heng and the others looked at Yun Jian in surprise. They didn't hear the conversation between Yun Jian and Duan Lei, but even though they were far away, it wasn't difficult to see that Duan Lei was very respectful to Yun Jian. "You know him? He's the underworld boss's underling." Gu Heng took over everyone's confusion and asked with a sideways glance. Yun Jian pursed her red lips and smiled without saying anything. She walked past the group of unreasonable people and walked towards Chinsini. TCH. Why is this girl acting so mysterious? Does she really think that she's a powerful person? Does she think that she's more powerful than the underworld boss? What kind of person is this? When a girl saw that Yun Jian had ignored Gu Heng and walked away, she couldn't help but shout loudly in order to flatter Gu Heng. She was secretly criticizing Yun Jian in her heart. When this girl was criticizing Yun Jian, her voice was especially loud, as if she was afraid that Yun Jian couldn't hear her. This shout was so loud that even Duan Lei, who was standing far away, could hear it. He couldn't help but frown, but he didn't say anything. The girl muttered a few words about Yun Jian, but when she saw that Yun Jian was too lazy to pay attention to her, she stopped talking. Yun Jian had already returned to the seat between Chinsini and Zhang Xiaofeng and smiled at them. Gu Heng and the others also found a place to sit down, their faces brimming with youthful passion. It was obvious that today's challenge match was something that they were looking forward to, longing for, or even yearning for. After waiting for a long time, Yun Jian finally saw Duan Lei waving at her from afar. Understanding that the match was about to begin, she turned to Chinsini and said, "I'm going to the washroom." She did not say that she was going up to fight. Although Chinsini and the others would find out about it sooner or later, they would not believe her if she said it now. She might as well let them see it for themselves. "Huh. The match is about to start. Jian Jian, go quickly." "Oh, right, do you know where the washroom is? Do you want me to bring you there?" Chinsini offered kindly. "No need." Yun Jian shook her head with a grin, bearing a row of neat and pearly white teeth. She then hopped down from the spectator stand that wasn't too high and went around the ring to the backstage after a few steps. Chapter 121. As expected, the match began a few minutes later. Chinsini and Zhang Xiaofeng looked anxious. Both of them were wondering why Yunjian had not returned after going to the washroom for so long. The match was about to begin. At this moment, a tall and sturdy man walked out from the back of the arena. This man was bare-chested, and his broad shoulders and muscular arms seemed to be overbearing and powerful. He was at least 9 meters tall. If an ordinary person were to stand next to this man, it would be the difference between a giant and a dwarf. This man was one of the protagonists of the match, the foreigner who had made a bet with Su Zetian. His name was Shiniji. Shiniji was from country Y and was also a boxer in the country's national team. He was so strong that he almost made it into the international tournament. Of course, it was almost. Even so, someone like Shiniji could cause a stir in Longmen City even if he almost made it into the international tournament. Therefore, when Shiniji entered the ring, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone knew that it was a young woman who was representing Country Z to fight Shiniji today. Looking at Shiniji's physique, did Country Z still have a chance of winning? Unless the woman was even more muscular than Shiniji. Not only did the crowd think so, even Zhang Xiaofeng, Gu Heng, and the rest thought so. Master, why did she go to the washroom for so long? Such an exciting match is about to begin. Sini, why don't you go to the washroom and look for her? Zhang Xiaofeng turned to Chen Sini, looking anxious. In spite of it, Zhang Xiaofeng saw Chen Sini looking at the ring with exaggerated shock. All of a sudden, the surroundings fell silent. It was as if the sound was cut off midway. The place was so quiet that one could hear the sound of a pin dropping to the ground. Zhang Xiaofeng frowned suspiciously as he followed Chen Sini's gaze to the ring. He seemed to have seen something as his pupils contracted and his eyes widened while his mouth formed an O shape. Looking at Gu Heng and the others, everyone present could only use one expression to describe them: shock. Following the crowd's gaze, they saw Yunjian's long black hair swaying as she walked out from the backstage of the arena with light steps. She curled her lips and maintained a slightly leisurely expression from the beginning to the end. After a moment of dead silence, the atmosphere reached its climax. Oh my God! It was a little girl. Could it be that the person who's going to fight with that foreigner is just a little girl? Oh my God, did I see it wrong? The mafia boss actually let a little girl fight with a foreigner. Isn't he afraid of losing the bet? Look at the difference in height between the little girl and the foreigner. Do we really have a chance of winning this match? After a moment of silence, a storm of chatter resounded throughout the hall. Zhang Xiaofeng stood up from his seat in shock. He pointed at the girl with a faint smile on her face on the stage and gulped. He said in a half-surprised and half-delighted manner, "It's Master. It's Master." Could she be the woman Gu Heng was talking about who's going to fight with that foreigner tonight? Zhang Xiaofeng had mixed feelings at that moment. He was worried for Yunjian, but at the same time, he felt a deep sense of pride because he was Yunjian's disciple. In contrast, Gu Heng and the others looked like they had been constipated for a few days. Their faces were dark. Looking at the girl with a faint smile on her face on the stage, Gu Heng gulped again. So all the bragging that he had done to the crowd just now was like showing off in front of a big shot. In the arena, Shiniji looked at Yunjian's appearance. He put away the same shock in his heart and looked at Yunjian with disdain. He then mocked Yunjian in broken Chinese, "Is there no one else in Country Z? How dare you let a little girl fight with me? How can a girl with skinny arms and legs like her fight in the arena? Su Zetian is playing with me." Shiniji's arrogant and egotistical tone spread throughout the hall. Seeing this, everyone present was filled with anger as they looked at Shiniji. Any native would lose their cool in the face of a foreigner's mockery. Chapter 122. Yunjian's verbal rebuttal to Shiniji made the audience cheer for Yunjian. Even if Yunjian could not win today's match, at least she represented everyone and used her words to rebuke Shiniji. This resentment was returned to Shiniji, who had looked down on the Z's people. Of course, with Shiniji's achievements and the advantage of his burly physique, the audience did not think that Yunjian would win. "Little girl, you've successfully angered me. Shiniji flew into a rage out of humiliation and said furiously. Then, he stuck out his middle finger and pointed it at Yunjian. His scornful, arrogant, and slightly provocative tone sent chills down everyone's spine. Shiniji looked at Yunjian and said angrily, "Little girl, since you insist on fighting in this ring, Shiniji, will make sure you come in standing and go down lying down." He was definitely not speaking empty words. When the audience heard Shiniji's words, they could not help but shiver. The underground black market's arena matches were very cruel. No official referee would say something like stopping when it came to a fight. When two people fought in the arena, as long as they did not die, were seriously injured, or even completely paralyzed, no one would care. Even if the other party was really beaten to death, as long as the person had connections with the higher-ups, they could still get one foot in the police station and the other out of the police station. Who was Shiniji? He was a member of Country-Wise national arena team and someone who almost made it to the international arena. He was definitely capable. His sturdy muscles were not just for show. Yun Jian, on the other hand, had thin arms, a thin waist, and thin legs. She was only about 1.6 meters tall and could not even be compared to Shiniji, who was 1.9 meters tall. To put it simply, Shiniji could probably crush a handful of Yun Jian with one hand. Obviously, Shiniji's words were meant to severely injure Yun Jian during the match. After Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Sini heard Shiniji's words, they started to worry about Yun Jian. They quickly accepted that Yun Jian was the person who was going to fight with Shiniji today, but they did not expect Yun Jian to win. After all, the difference in strength was obvious. However, Zhang Xiaofeng still gathered a few people to cheer for Yun Jian. Among them, Zhang Xiaofeng was the most enthusiastic. His hoarse shout spread throughout the arena. "Master, go! Master, go! Yun Jian, win! Yun Jian, win!" After Shiniji said those harsh words to Yun Jian heard Zhang Xiaofeng's hoarse shout. Yun Jian pursed her lips. She did not look at Zhang Xiaofeng and the others. Instead, she looked at Shiniji and stuck out her little finger at him. She smiled contemptuously and said, "I'll return the same words to you. Once you're in this arena, you'll have to leave lying down." This little girl was so frivolous. At that moment, this thought appeared in everyone's minds. Shiniji was frivolous because of his achievements. However, why was Yun Jian so frivolous? Pfft! Shiniji sneered at Yun Jian and said, "Then, come on." The person who was hosting today's match was Duan Lei. However, even Duan Lei had to re-evaluate Yun Jian. He felt that this girl was not ordinary. However, he could not pinpoint exactly what was so special about her. There's no need to announce the start of the match. Just go up and finish it quickly. I'm always ready to deal with you. Yun Jian crossed her arms and looked at Shiniji with raised eyebrows. Her words made Shiniji so angry that he almost stomped his feet. Chapter 123. Good. I hope you can leave this place alive. Shiniji snorted in a strange tone. He clenched his fists, and his knuckles cracked. Everyone who heard the sound couldn't help but shudder. On the second floor of the arena, in the VIP seats, Su Zetian frowned as he looked at the confident girl in the arena. This match was very important to him. That was why he asked the Kosha mercenaries for help. Although Yun Jian was young and looked harmless, Su Zetian knew very well that the people sent by the Kosha mercenaries were all hiding their strength. Even a 7 or 8-year-old child from the Kosha mercenaries could smile and look at you in the eye for 1 second, then pull out a gun and kill your opponent in the next second. And Yun Jian, Su Zetian stared intently at the arena, but his thoughts suddenly changed at this moment. Once Shiniji was done with his words, he bellowed and charged at Yun Jian with a clench of his sturdy fist. At that moment, everyone held their breaths. Everyone looked at the girl in the arena quietly. Yun Jian stood on the spot, narrowed her eyes, and didn't move. Shiniji used all his strength in this punch. If this punch landed on Yun Jian, if she was really an ordinary girl, this punch would either kill or seriously injure her. Shiniji was going to be ruthless. Oh my god, is that girl scared silly? She's standing there without moving. Does she want to be beaten into a meat patty? Oh my god. Someone screamed at this moment. Everyone was already imagining the scene of Yunjian being sent flying by Shiniji's punch. Some of the more timid girls closed their eyes in fear, not daring to see what would happen next. Yunjian's grim voice sounded in their ears, "You're dead meat." Yunjian's eyes suddenly changed, and a faint smile spread from her lips. She said this to Shiniji indifferently. Shiniji's heart skipped a beat. At that moment, everyone's heart tightened into a straight line. Hua! Shiniji was even more furious after hearing this, and he swung his fist at Yunjian. But a shocking scene suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Yunjian, who had been standing still, dodged Shiniji's punch at a speed that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Shiniji didn't think that Yunjian could dodge his attack at lightning speed, and he was stunned for a few seconds. It was these few seconds that became Shiniji's weak point. On the battlefield, a moment of stupor was fatal. Yunjian appeared behind Shiniji and punched him in the ribs and the back. Ah! Immense pain spread through his entire body, and Shiniji fell to the ground with a bang, letting out a heart-wrenching howl. Victory and defeat had been decided in one move. She defeated Shiniji in just a few seconds and a single move. She defeated Shiniji, an expert who almost made it to the International Challenge Tournament. At that moment, Zhang Xiaofeng, Chen Sini, and Gu Heng were all stunned. Even Su Zetian, who was sitting in the VIP seats, was stunned. Shiniji, a fighter from country Y who was rumored to be great and who almost made it into the international arena, could not even last a single move from Yunjian. Was this Yunjian's strength? Shiniji, whose ribs were broken, widened his eyes. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it. This little girl defeated him with one move? That was impossible. She had defeated him. His reputation would be ruined from now on. Shiniji shook his head. He suddenly took out a hard object from his pocket and pointed it at Yunjian. She must die. He has a gun. He has a gun. He's going to kill someone. He's going to kill someone. At that moment, everyone who was shocked by Yunjian's move suddenly screamed. Su Zetian also stood up from his seat with a whoosh. He held on to the railing on the second floor. However, the girl's aura changed the moment Shiniji took out his gun. Her slight smile gradually disappeared and was replaced by a cold and eerie smile. A cold murderous aura emanated from Yunjian. Chapter 124. When they saw Shiniji pull out his gun, Gu Heng and the others almost screamed. Especially the few girls who were with Gu Heng and were prejudiced against Yunjian. They were all students in school and came from powerful families. Usually, they would cry if they hurt a finger. When had they ever seen such a scene? Their legs started to turn to jelly. They hugged their heads and squatted on the ground, crying. Master. Zhang Xiaofeng twitched violently. Seeing that Yunjian was in danger, he wanted to rush forward. However, Gu Heng grabbed the corner of his shirt and scolded him, "You're crazy. That foreigner has a gun. But my master is in danger." Zhang Xiaofeng was very determined. He was about to push Gu Heng away and run toward Yunjian. However, they suddenly saw a horrifying scene. Yunjian lifted her feet and slowly walked toward Shiniji. She did not care that the gun in Shiniji's hand was still pointed at her. Facing the black muzzle, she was not afraid at all. Under everyone's horrified gazes, she slowly walked toward Shiniji. What was she doing? Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts jumped. As Yunjian walked, she pulled out a machete like magic. She pointed it at Shiniji, who was lying on the ground with broken ribs, and sneered, "How dare you point a gun at me? You're dead." Shiniji's hand holding the gun was already trembling. Shiniji was originally a boxer. He was not an assassin or a gangster. If he were to kill someone with a gun, he would not be able to do it as calmly as Yun Jian. Another reason was that he was in Z country. After all, it was not his country's territory. If he killed Yun Jian, Su Zetian would definitely not ignore it. In spite of it, Yun Jian's words had obviously triggered Shiniji further. Shiniji howled on the spot. Thinking about the humiliation he had just suffered, his hand was about to pull the trigger. What everyone was thinking at this moment was, it's over. Yun Jian is definitely done for. Yun Jian only had a knife in her hand. How could a knife be faster than a bullet? She also had to provoke Shiniji into pulling the trigger when he was in an unstable mood. Was Yun Jian courting death? Ah! Go to hell! Shiniji howled. He ignored the pain in his back and aimed his gun at Yun Jian. However, just as Shinich's finger was about to pull the trigger, a gleaming scimitar flew out from a distance. With astonishing speed and precision, the tip of the scimitar pointed downwards and cut the back of Shinich's hand. A woo! Shiniji's hand that was about to pull the trigger loosened, and the gun fell to the ground in a straight line. That scimitar was thrown out by Yun Jian. Just as everyone present was still shocked that Yun Jian's scimitar could cut the back of Shinich's hand so accurately, Yun Jian took 2 steps forward and rolled a few times on the ground. Almost in an instant, she flipped over and came in front of Shinich. She got up and stepped on Shinich's ribs that were already heavily injured. Ah! Shinich let out a heart-wrenching scream. At this moment, Yun Jian had already stepped on Shinich's back. She bent down and picked up the gun that Shinich had dropped from the ground. She played with it in her palm. The entire process only took a few seconds. The people who saw this scene just now all stood up from their seats with a whoosh sound in horror. What did they just see? Shinich, who was holding a gun, was actually killed by Yun Jian in just a few seconds. Oh my god. He was faster than Yun Jian, who only had a knife in her hand. Who exactly was this girl? With this kind of skill and speed, this girl was definitely not human. At this moment, Yun Jian picked up the gun and pressed the black muzzle against Shinich's face. It was unclear whether he had fainted or was scared senseless. The girl's demonic voice came from above and resounded throughout the entire place. Killing you will be as easy as slaughtering an animal. Shinich's heart was already filled with shock and fear. He had never seen anyone so agile. Moreover, it was an underage girl. As far as he knew, there was only one kind of person who could snatch a gun from an enemy's hand. Chapter 125. However, no matter how hard Shiniji racked his brains, he would never categorize Yun Jian as a secret agent or an assassin. After all, Yun Jian's age was obvious. However, her skills didn't match her age. Wait. Miss Yun, please wait. Duan Lei said as he rushed up to the stage and stopped Yun Jian from killing Shiniji. Miss Yun, please spare Shiniji's life for the sake of our boss. Having witnessed what Yun Jian was capable of, Duan Lei felt genuine respect for her as he spoke to her hastily. Although Shiniji deserved to die, he was a member of Country-Y's national arena team. Killing him was equivalent to killing a key figure that Country-Y had groomed. Naturally, Country-Y's people would not let it go. This was no longer a matter of personal grudges. It would lead to a bloody battle, and the consequences would be severe. You want me to let him go? Yun Jian raised her eyebrows as she held the pistol and patted the black muzzle on Shiniji's face twice. Faced with the young lady's questioning, Duan Lei could not help but gulp. Finally, he mustered up his courage and nodded. Yes. Sure. Yun Jian's casual words made everyone present heave a sigh of relief. After all, this was a competition. Shiniji's drawing of a pistol was enough to make everyone afraid. If Yun Jian were to kill someone in public, many people present would probably lose sleep for several nights. At that moment, Yun Jian's eyes suddenly sharpened. She lifted her foot from Shiniji's back and took 2 steps back to stabilize herself. Then, she said to Duan Lei, I can let him go. At that point, even Shiniji, who was lying on the ground and starting to feel dizzy, breathed a sigh of relief. The one thing he regretted the most was underestimating Yunjian. Don't mess with her. But his hand, I want it. Yunjian's casual words were suddenly heard in the next second. What followed was the crisp sound of a gunshot. Bang! Bang! The gunshot sounded and the gun fell. 2 bullets pierced through Shiniji's wrist and into his bone marrow. Ah! 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 Shiniji howled in pain. When the bullet entered his hand, it was as if it had penetrated a piece of wood, piercing his liver and spleen. Ah! The screams came from the spectators' seats. Spear. Yunjian actually fired the gun. Compared to some timid girls, Zhang Xiaofeng and the others were full of passion. Although they were also afraid, they couldn't help but admire Yunjian from the bottom of their hearts. Everyone present had seen Shiniji's previous attitude. Shiniji had not only ridiculed Yunjian, but more importantly, he had ridiculed Country Z. He had ridiculed their country. Just based on this point alone, even if Shiniji died 10,000 times, it wouldn't be enough to appease the hatred in their hearts. Looking at his wrists that were shot by the pistol, Shiniji fainted. Yunjian's 2 shots not only crushed Shiniji's dignity, but also ended his career as a boxer. Because Shiniji's meridians were broken, it was equivalent to his hands being crippled. The most basic requirement for a boxer was to have a pair of strong hands. After Yunjian fired the shot, she threw the pistol to Duan Lei and said, "Tell your boss that I've won the match." After she finished speaking, she turned around and walked out of the ring. Duan Lei hurriedly caught the pistol that Yunjian had thrown to him. He swallowed his saliva and turned around to clean up the mess. Seeing that the match had ended, the protagonist, Yunjian, also walked out. Zhang Xiaofeng and the others hurriedly ran out after her. Chapter 126. Before Yunjian could step out of the arena, Zhang Xiaofeng's urgent voice came from behind her. "Master, master. Master, wait for us." She turned around and looked up at them with a faint smile. "The arena is over. It's dark now. It's time to go home." Zhang Xiaofeng and the rest, who were running up behind her, could not help but be speechless. They muttered in their hearts, "Shouldn't you explain something? Master, what happened just now? Why did you fight with that foreigner? Also, your posture just now was so cool. By the way, how did you throw the knife out just now? That move was so powerful. It was like a living version of Xiao Li's flying knife." Zhang Xiaofeng's words were fired like a machine gun. "Stop," Yunjian ordered. This voice shut Zhang Xiaofeng up on the spot. He did not say anything else. "How am I supposed to answer you with so many questions at once?" Yunjian raised her beautiful eyebrows and smiled shyly like a young girl. At this moment, Yunjian seemed to have turned into a fresh and beautiful young girl. It was as if the young girl who was dismissive of Shiniji just now did not exist at all. "This. Then we'll answer them one by one. Master, why were you the one who fought with that foreigner just now? Also, why didn't you tell us this earlier?" Zhang Xiaofeng asked the question that everyone wanted to know. Pairs of black eyes stared at Yunjian in unison. Yunjian pursed her lips and finally opened her mouth. She reached out and snapped her fingers in the air. Then, she pursed her lips at Zhang Xiaofeng and smiled mysteriously. "Take a guess." After that, she turned around and did not intend to explain further. However, what Yunjian did not expect was that Zhang Xiaofeng and the rest would follow closely behind her, begging her to teach them the domineering moves just now. Even Gu Heng followed closely behind Yunjian. He even apologized to Yunjian for his previous actions. This caused Zhang Xiaofeng to brag to Gu Heng and the others somewhat childishly, "This is my master." Yunjian finally got rid of Zhang Xiaofeng and the group of people who were chasing her to get to the bottom of things. She set foot on the road home. It was chilly at night, especially when it was close to winter and autumn. The weather changed quickly, and the temperature difference between day and night was large. Yun Jian was wearing a jacket today, but she still felt a little cold. As they walked past a street lamp, a sports car drove past them and stopped beside Yun Jian. Yun Jian had not expected the car to stop. She pulled her jacket around herself and turned around. Coincidentally, she saw Ce sitting in the Lamborghini looking at her. He tilted his head, and his chiseled features became clearer under the street lights. "Get in the car," Ce spat out 2 words from his beautiful thin lips. Yun Jian did not stand on ceremony. She immediately walked over to open the door of the Lamborghini and sat in the front passenger seat. The heater in the car warmed up Yun Jian's body temperature. "Why are you wearing so little every time? Do you want to freeze to death?" Ce raised the temperature in the car again and glanced at Yun Jian. Yun Jian opened her mouth, but found that she could not refute him. In the end, Yun Jian only said one sentence: "Why are you looking for me?" Ce paused, and a trace of warmth appeared on his flawless face. "I'm taking you to a banquet. I'll be back tomorrow. Auntie has already informed you, so you don't have to worry about staying out all night." As he spoke, he did not allow Yun Jian to resist at all. He stepped on the accelerator and sped off. By the time Yun Jian reacted, Ce had already taken her to the back of the mountain. They boarded Ce's private jet and hurried to Country M. Chapter 127. Country M, New York. New York was located in the southeastern part of Country M along the Atlantic Ocean. It was Country M's largest city and largest port. It was a world-class international metropolis. Ce's private jet flew over New York's airspace and finally landed in an empty space at an airport. Because it was a private jet, there was no need to transfer planes in between. Thus, the flight took less than 10 hours. Due to the time difference between Country Z and Country M, it was around 6:00 in the morning in Country Z. However, it was already 6:00 in the evening in Country M. It was also dinner time. Yun Jian took a nap on the plane. This was the first time she had slept so soundly since her rebirth. When she woke up, the plane had already landed on land. Yun Jian rubbed her eyes and got up from the soft cushion. She stretched and suddenly felt that something was amiss. Cushion? She turned her head and was surprised to find that she had fallen asleep leaning on Ce's lap. What was going on? She remembered that after she boarded the private jet, Ce did not explain the situation to her. She looked at the scenery outside the window and gradually fell asleep. However, she had clearly chosen a soft cushion to fall asleep on the plane. Why was her head lying on Ce's lap when she woke up? Could it be that he had moved her head to his lap? Yun Jian pursed her lips slightly when she thought of this. Even if he had moved her head from the cushion to his lap, why didn't she feel anything at all? This shouldn't be the case. How could she let down her usual guard and fall asleep peacefully without any fear? "You're awake?" Ce's hoarse and magnetic voice sounded from above her head. Yun Jian looked up and saw Ce's handsome face turn to the side. His fair and slender fingers were scratching his messy short black hair. His earlobes were slightly red. Yun Jian swallowed her saliva and pursed her lips to reveal a stiff smile. "Have we arrived?" "Yes." Ce nodded. He stretched out his slender fingers and opened the door of the plane. He turned sideways and jumped out first. Yun Jian bent over and also jumped out of the cabin door. After Yun Jian landed on the ground, Ce grabbed her little hand and walked towards the street. Yun Jian was stunned by Ce's actions. She wanted to shake off his hand, but found that he was not as strong as her. This was also the first time she had encountered such a situation. She immediately blushed and lowered her head. Don't look at how Yun Jian could kill people so easily. Even if she saw erotic scenes in her previous life, she could still do it without blushing. However, he felt that Ce was different from everyone else. She couldn't describe how she felt. The banquets of the upper class usually started at around 8 o'clock, which meant that there was still some time left. Ce smiled beautifully as he held Yunjian's warm little hand and walked towards one of the top clothing stores in New York. This clothing store was owned by a world-class fashion designer in New York. Usually, it received very few customers. However, the customers it received were all world-class bigwigs. As Ce held Yunjian's little hand and walked into the store, Yunjian saw two men in their 20s walking towards her. When the two men saw Ce and Yunjian holding hands, they couldn't help but be stunned. Then, they walked in front of Ce and lowered their heads. "Young master, the dress is ready." Yunjian was also stunned when she saw the two men. They were the two men who had been standing on either side of Ce when she had first met Ce. Chapter 128. Ce nodded slightly. He pulled Yunjian past the two men and walked towards the changing room. The two men were left dumbfounded. F***ck, is the young master enlightened? He's even learned how to hold a woman's hand. One of the men rubbed his hands, a trace of surprise appearing on his handsome face. He couldn't hold it in any longer and said to the other man, "Adam, the young master's matters aren't something you and I can casually discuss. Do your job well." The other man, who looked more composed, reminded him before turning to leave. The man called Adam stood there and clicked his tongue twice. He muttered to the more composed man, "Go, go, go, you're the most serious one." Ce had a custom-made lace evening gown for Yunjian. It was pure black and not revealing at all. This evening gown was designed by the world's top fashion designer and was one of a kind in the world. Its economic value couldn't be measured by money. After Yunjian changed and came out, she saw that Ce had already changed into a formal suit. Ce's foundation was very good. His handsome face was flawless, his tall nose bridge and deep eyes exuded the aura of a king. The black suit clung to his muscular skin. When Yunjian came out, Ce's fair and slender fingers tugged at the tie of his suit. From the side, he looked like a still and untainted figure in a painting. He was so handsome and delicate that there was nothing to nitpick about him. Even though Yunjian had seen many handsome and delicate men in her previous life, none of them could compare to the one in front of her. She was stunned for a few seconds. "What's wrong?" Yunjian only reacted when she heard a pleasant male voice. Ce narrowed his eyes as he sized up the young lady in the black lace evening gown. Every time he met Yunjian's eyes, he would suppress his distant feelings towards women and wanted to take a step closer to her. When he first discovered this, even he couldn't believe it. He knew himself very well. He hated women. Ever since he was young, as long as there were women around, he would feel nauseous. If a woman came close to him, he would feel extremely disgusted. This is a quirk. But it was different for Yunjian. He could feel it deeply. Yunjian's petite figure kept floating in front of him. That faint milky fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose, making him feel a little different. That was why he couldn't help but get close to her, and even hold her hand. Therefore, when Ce saw Yunjian's smooth and tender arms, the lace gown that accentuated her petite figure, and her well-developed twin peaks, he couldn't help but gulp. "Let's go." Yunjian moved her red lips and walked out directly. Ce paused for a moment as the girl's fragrance dissipated into the distance. Then, he strode after her. Country M, New York, the 39th floor of the Triangle Building. In the middle of the room, a dignified and imposing middle-aged man in his 40s was holding a glass of red wine and chatting amicably with a man of the same age in front of him. This dignified middle-aged man was called Si Chu. He was the head of the armaments family, Cold Pavilion. Without a doubt, he was also Ce's biological father. At this moment, Si Chu was chatting happily with the middle-aged man opposite him. Chapter 129. Si Chu followed the middle-aged man's gaze and saw a 17 or 18-year-old girl standing there. She was pretty and had an outstanding temperament among the group. Of course, as the leader of the Arms family, Si Chu did not care about the appearance of his future daughter-in-law. He cared about the marriage between the big families and the friendly relationship between the big families. He nodded at the middle-aged man and praised hypocritically, "Old Shi, your daughter is not bad. She has a good temperament." This was Si Chu's highest compliment. He patted the man's shoulder as he spoke. Shi Ichuan's face lit up. He moved closer to Si Chu and smiled. "Then, about the marriage between Ce and my daughter, of course it's a done deal." Si Chu replied with a laugh and an absolute tone. Shi Ichuan smiled and lowered his voice to ask Si Chu, "Then, does Ce agree to this marriage? How can he not agree to this kind of thing?" "Humph. I'm his father. Can't I make the decision for such a small matter?" Speaking of this, Si Chu suddenly felt as if he had been hit on the trigger point. He said angrily. Speaking of his son, he really could not control him. However, he would never lower his head in front of outsiders. Naturally, he had to put on a "I'm the father, I make the decision" attitude. Hearing Si Chu's affirmative tone, Shi Ichuan seemed to be relieved. At this moment, a man walked over and whispered in Si Chu's ear. Si Chu immediately reacted and moved his old face closer to Shi Ichuan. He smiled and said, "My son is here. Hurry up and ask your daughter to come over. Let the two of them meet." Shi Ichuan was happy when he heard this. He hurriedly waved at his daughter, Shi Laixiang. Shi Laixiang had been waiting there for a long time. When she saw her father waving at her, she hurriedly ran over. Her heart was filled with joy and nervousness like a young girl. She had met Ce a year ago and fell in love with him at first sight. The young man's handsome face kept appearing in her mind and she could not get it out of her mind. Although they were far apart, ever since they met, she swore that she would marry him. On the other hand, the Shi family and the Si family were both military families, and the two families had a mutual interest. The upper-class aristocratic families usually liked to unite their families through marriage to strengthen the trust between them. Although it was the modern era, these old customs could not be changed. Beep. The only elevator beside the banquet hall opened. Shi Laixiang stood beside her father, Shi Ichuan. Her entire body was tense. She even ran her fingers through a few strands of her hair, afraid that her imperfections would be exposed. Only she knew the nervousness in her heart when she saw the person she missed dearly. The moment the elevator doors opened, however, what everyone saw was Ce, who was perfect to the extreme. As well as the petite girl standing beside him who was also extremely beautiful. The young girl was wearing a lace gown that outlined her petite figure. Her curvaceous figure was revealed in front of everyone. She was beautiful and elegant. When the two of them stood together, it was as if they were a match made in heaven. They were actually so compatible. Si Chu, Shi Ichuan, and Shi Laixiang were dumbfounded. Not only the three of them, but everyone present was mesmerized by Ce and Yunjian's stunning appearance. They were unable to extricate themselves. Ce held Yunjian's small hand and walked out of the elevator step by step. They stood in front of everyone. Yunjian realized that Ce had only glanced at Si Chu when he walked in front of him. Without saying a word, he pulled her to the side. "Damn brat, stop right there. What kind of attitude is this? How can you leave without saying a word when you see me? Where is your upbringing? If I didn't know better, I would have thought that you were a bastard with a mother but no father. Also, who is this girl beside you?" Si Chu felt that he had lost face and spoke to Ce angrily. Ce turned his head to look at Si Chu. He held Yunjian's hand tightly and said coldly to Si Chu, "My mother is already dead. That woman is not my mother." When he said this, Yunjian could clearly feel the coldness and loneliness in Ce's voice. Chapter 130. When Yun Jian heard Si Yi's words, she was shocked. But when she scanned the room and saw Shi Laixiang, who was standing not far away from Si Chu, she suddenly understood. This woman was the fiancée Si Yi's father had arranged for Si Yi, right? This banquet was probably used by Si Yi's father to announce Si Yi and Shi Laixiang's engagement. It wasn't strange for upper-class families to use marriage to consolidate their interests. Yun Jian smiled. It seemed like Si Yi wasn't satisfied with this arranged marriage and was planning to use her as an excuse. Si Yi's attitude towards her was quite good, so she would naturally help her. Nonsense. Nonsense. It's fine if you usually make a fuss, but today you even found a woman? Are you trying to anger me to death? Si Chu flew into a rage. When Si Yi mentioned that his mother was already dead, Si Chu felt like he had been exposed in a scandal as he shuddered in rage. Si Chu was the head of the Cold Court, an armaments aristocratic family. After he married Si Yi's mother, he divorced Si Yi's mother in order to expand the Cold Court's power and influence. He then married the daughter of another armaments aristocratic family. At the same time, Si Chu also forced Si Yi's mother to stay by his side. In the end, Si Yi's mother became depressed and committed suicide due to depression. Today, in order to consolidate his position in the Cold Court, Si Chu planned to use Si Yi's marriage to form a marriage alliance with the Shi family. But he didn't expect that Si Yi would have such a huge reaction. He even found a woman to humiliate him in public. This made Si Chu, an internationally renowned armaments tycoon, completely furious. Brother Si Yi, it's wrong of you to do this. Don't make uncle angry. Shi Laixiang looked at Yun Jian's and Si Yi's intertwined hands. She dug her fingertips into her skin and played the role of the good guy. She spoke coyly to Si Yi in a gentle voice. What are you? What does my business have to do with you? Si Yi cast a sidelong glance at Shi Laixiang, not giving her any face at all. Shi Laixiang had originally planned to speak up after Si Chu had spoken. This way, she could improve her image in front of Si Chu and let Si Yi see her gentle side and have a good impression of her. But who would have thought that Si Yi wouldn't give her any face at all? She looked at Yun Jian, who was standing next to Si Yi, and she became even angrier. Her eyes turned red because the person she had been longing for had said such things to her. Si Chu felt humiliated at once. He knew that he couldn't control his son, so he pointed at Yun Jian and threatened her. Which family's young lady are you from? Rong family? Wen family? Fong family? I don't care which family's young lady you're from. Get out of here now or your family will disappear from the international stage forever because of you. The aristocratic families that Si Chu had pointed out were all internationally renowned big shots. It was obvious that he thought that Yun Jian was a young lady from one of these aristocratic families. Yun Jian was amused when she heard that. She narrowed her eyes and met Si Chu's murderous gaze fearlessly in front of everyone. Her red lips curled up. I'm a young lady from the Yun family. Let me introduce myself. My name is Yun Jian. I live in Country Z's Longmen City. My mom is a waitress at a hotel, Country Z's Longmen City. A waitress at a hotel. Everyone latched on to these words. Si Chu stomped his feet, almost vomiting blood from anger. He thought that the woman his son had found would be a socialite of the upper class even if she wasn't from an aristocratic family. Chapter 131. Si Chu was furious. He did not threaten Yun Jian anymore. Instead, he waved his hand and called for his bodyguards, intending to chase her out. Someone, chase her out. If Yun Jian was a young lady from an aristocratic family, Si Chu might have given her some face. However, Yun Jian had said it herself. She was just a person with no status. Si Chu was naturally fearless and prepared to chase her out on the spot. He had lost all his face today. There was a saying that one should not wash one's dirty linen in public. However, after today's incident, he had no face left. A few bodyguards in black suits and sunglasses surrounded Yun Jian and Ce. "I'll see who dares to touch my people." Ce sneered. He calmly pulled out a pistol from the holster at his waist, pulled the trigger, and pointed it at Si Chu. Ce had already decided to shed all pretense of cordiality. Ever since Ce could remember, he had never acknowledged Si Chu as his father. He had not even called him Dad for so many years. In his impression, this so-called father was the murderer who had directly forced his mother to commit suicide. He could still remember that his mother had committed suicide due to depression. Si Chu had always locked his mother up and kept her at home in the name of love. Later, his mother had suffered from depression and was not allowed to seek treatment. Si Chu was a person who cared about his reputation. He did not allow outsiders to know about his family's dirty linen. Hence, when Si Yi's mother had suffered from depression, he was not allowed to seek treatment. Hence, Si Yi's mother had been too depressed and could not bear the torture of her illness. Hence, she committed suicide. Furthermore, she had died in front of Ce, who was only 5 years old at the time. He still could not forget the bloody corpse of his mother. At that time, he was just a child. Since then, he had developed an extreme sense of disgust and alienation toward all women. It had been the same for 19 years. It was not until he met Yun Jian that he realized that she was different from other girls and women. He did not hate Yun Jian. On the contrary, he had a different feeling towards her. Bastard. Are you going to kill your father for this woman? Si Chu was so angry that his hands were trembling. Back then, he had divorced Si Yi's mother and married the daughter of another aristocratic family for the sake of expanding Cold Pavilion's influence. Today, the Cold Court had become the vanguard of the world's military families, but his most beloved son had turned against him. He had only loved one woman all these years, and that was Si Yi's mother. But for the sake of so-called face and power, he gave up these feelings of love. He had countless mistresses in his life, and it wasn't that he didn't have any other sons or daughters. However, Ce was the only one he had chosen as the successor of the Cold Court. In Si Chu's heart, everything he did was for Ce. Chapter 132. Yun Jian was the king of secret agents in her previous life, the world's top secret agent, slaying God. She was indeed a secret agent trained by the world's top underground assassin organization, an Hun Group. Of course, an Hun's underlings could not control her due to her extraordinary capability in her previous life. Slaying God was the only secret agent in an Hun's history to successfully break free from the organization's control. At the same time, she started killing at the age of 12 and left an Hun Group when she was 14. In the same year, she killed the previous boss of Kosha mercenaries and developed her own force. Therefore, the king of secret agents, slaying God, was known as a legend in the underworld. The only one who could be mentioned in the same breath as the king of secret agents, slaying God, was the leader of an Hun Group. The leader of an Hun Group was a mystery. No one had ever seen him, not even knowing if he was a man or a woman, old or young. The only ones who had seen the leader of an Hun Group were the 4 leaders of the organization. Shuang was one of them. As for the Kosha mercenaries' forces, there was no need to mention them. An Hun Group and Kosha mercenaries were 2 major organizations that monopolized the entire underground organization. Even Si Chu, the master of Cold Pavilion, a military family, had to lower his head in fear when he saw people from these 2 major assassin organizations. When Si Chu saw the woman in a beautiful blue evening gown and the man with a huge scar on his neck, his legs turned to jelly. He could not care less about his son, Ce, as he hurried to greet them. His smile was stiff, but it was forced as he extended his hand to shake their hands. What a rare guest. We welcome both of you to attend tonight's banquet. Si Chu was the one who had arranged the banquet. His goal was to arrange a marriage between his son and Shi Chuan's daughter. He did not expect the Kosha mercenaries and an Hun Group to be here, so he was so embarrassed that his face was about to burst. However, the woman in the blue evening gown walked past Si Chu and went straight to Yun Jian, ignoring his goodwill. She stood in front of Yun Jian and greeted respectfully, "Sister Jian." The woman in the blue evening gown was obviously Snake Lizard, who had changed into the black robe that covered her entire body to reveal her sexy figure. The two words Snake Lizard caused everyone present to suck in a deep breath. Most of the people there were businessmen and politicians from prominent families and families. The biggest symbol of Wuxia mercenaries was the skull mark on their wrists. It was a mark that could not be imitated by outsiders. Someone who could make Wuxia mercenaries stand in front of her and greet her as Sister Jian respectfully was a rare sight. How could this girl, who claimed to be from a small town in Z country and whose mother was an ordinary hotel attendant, be an ordinary person? Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. She was related to kosher mercenaries? Yun Jian nodded slightly at Snake Lizard. She did not expect to meet Snake Lizard here. Snake Lizard had kept a low profile when she returned to Longmen City the last time. She was dressed very tightly, so the skull mark on her wrists was not exposed. Today, Snake Lizard had changed into a blue evening gown. Her enchanting female body was faintly discernible. At the same time, the skull mark on her wrists was also intimidating. The girl in front of him was related to kosher mercenaries. More importantly, the kosher mercenaries who did not even care about Si Chu was calling Yun Jian, Sister Jian, respectfully. What did this mean? Si Chu started to twitch. Shi Laixiang was annoyed when she saw everyone's attention on Yun Jian. Chapter 133. When Shi Laixiang said this, she even shook Shi Ichuan's hand and acted like a spoiled child. However, Shi Laixiang's words attracted everyone's attention. Let the internationally famous assassin organization that kills without blinking an eye be polite? Pfft, this Shi Laixiang must be stupid. Was she that lucky? Everyone snorted, but in front of Yun Jian and the others, no one dared to say anything for fear of implicating themselves. When Shi Ichuan heard his daughter say this, he was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. He lowered his voice and shouted at Shi Laixiang, "Xiang, shut up." Unexpectedly, Shi Laixiang did not notice the change in the atmosphere at all. She shouted even more confidently, "Dad, they were in the wrong. They were rude. That's what you've always taught us. We have to be polite. Those who don't have manners are a bunch of lowly and uncultured people. These kinds of people will never be able to show their faces." Shi Laixiang's words were clear and logical. Even she felt that it was reasonable. When Shi Ichuan heard his daughter's words, he was so scared that he almost turned into a puddle of water. Of course, he could tell that his daughter was scolding Yun Jian in a roundabout way. "Shi Laixiang, shut your mouth." Shi Ichuan's trembling finger pointed fiercely at his daughter, even roaring out her full name. However, he could not explain it to his daughter now. If they went against the kosher mercenaries, the Shi family would probably be wiped out. Because the kosher mercenaries was an organization made up of international elite assassins, their hands were stained with countless blood. They were so powerful that they were intimidating and terrifying. Simply put, the kosher mercenaries could wipe out the Shi family effortlessly. "Dad, you're yelling at me again." Shi Laixiang felt even more wronged. At the same time, she felt even more indignant that Yun Jian had stolen her limelight at the banquet. Yun Jian naturally heard the conversation between Shi Laixiang and Shi Ichuan. She curled her lips and glanced over, but she did not say anything. She did not care about Shi Laixiang's words at all. She had seen many people like Shi Laixiang in her past life. If she killed Shi Laixiang just because of one sentence, then there would be too many people in this world who would want to kill her. Of course, if Shi Laixiang made any further moves, she would definitely make her regret being born. Si Chu was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. It was too late for regrets. He never thought that Yun Jian could make the kosher mercenaries bow down to her. As soon as he thought of what he had just said to Yun Jian and what he was going to do, he felt his hair stand on end. Miss Yun, we were blind just now and said something wrong. I hope you won't take it to heart. Si Chu was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. His attitude towards Yun Jian had changed completely. Chapter 134. Since when did he become a thing? Si Yi's twinkling eyes narrowed, the corners of his lips curling upwards. However, after hearing Yun Jian's words, he felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. In contrast to Si Yi, Si Chu, Shi Yichuan, and Shi Lixiang's faces darkened. Si Chu and Shi Yichuan had intended to get close to each other by marrying their children, but after Yun Jian's words, both of them turned pale. Shi Lixiang was even paler. When she looked at Yun Jian again, she wanted nothing more than to tear her into pieces. Si Chu and Shi Yichuan knew that if they became enemies with the Kosha mercenaries because of this, both of their families would be removed from the international scene. Shi Yichuan, on the other hand, was afraid that his precious daughter would cause more trouble if he stayed any longer, so he made up a random excuse and left the banquet in a hurry. Cough, since and you are truly in love, then I shouldn't break you up. Si Chu tried to smooth things over. Today's matter was unexpected, but even so, a sly old fox like Si Chu could quickly minimize the impact of this matter on him. Moreover, it was uncertain whether his son, Si would still be together with Yun Jian when the time came. It wasn't too late to bring up this matter after today. When she heard Si Chu say, truly in love, Yun Jian's eyelids twitched and she blinked. The banquet finally came to an end. Snake. Lizard left the banquet hall to attend to her own matters. Yun Jian walked side by side with Si Yi. Suddenly, she reached out and poked Si Yi's arm, winking mischievously as she teased, I even sacrificed my reputation to help you just now. You should at least thank me. Those who knew Yun Jian well knew that she didn't joke often. This was a rare occasion when Yun Jian was in the mood to joke with Si Yi. I never thank people. Si Yi looked at Yun Jian playfully. Suddenly, her eyes became sharp and her deep eyes lit up under the street lights. But, he paused and looked at Yun Jian from head to toe. You can repay me with your body. Yun Jian was completely dumbfounded. She never thought that the usually cold and arrogant Si Yi would have such a playboy side. However, before she could think any further, a man in his 20s suddenly walked out from the darkness. The long scar on the man's neck left a deep impression. The person who came was Shuang. Shuang saw that Yun Jian was also here. He paused for a moment, but still went up to Si Yi and said, Young master. Yun Jian was stunned. She knew very well that Shuang was one of the 4 leaders of the Inhun organization. This was because she was an agent trained by the Inhun organization in her previous life. He's one of your men? Yun Jian asked the question that was bothering her. Si did not hide it at all as he answered, yes. Yun Jian did not ask further after that. There's no outsider here. Just say it. Si glanced at Shuang from the corner of his eyes. Si's words implied that Yun Jian was not an outsider. Shuang nodded and said, there's a change in the organization. Si could already tell what had happened from the 5 words. He turned to look at Yun Jian, his handsome face tilted slightly to show her an exquisite outline. I have something to do. Looks like I can't go back to Longmen City with you. You go back first. For some reason, when Yun Jian heard what he said, it felt like there was something going on between them. Her cheeks heated as she nodded slightly. Si then sent Yun Jian to his private jet considerately before leaving with Shuang. The private jet took off immediately. As they were more familiar with the journey back, it only took them 8 hours to return to Country Z. Chapter 135. At 4:00 in the afternoon, Yun Jian arrived home on time and carried her bag back to school for the weekend's evening self-study session. When the evening self-study session ended, Chen Sini turned around and patted her bulging bag, grinning at Yun Jian. Jian, I bet you didn't bring any snacks, did you? It's okay though, heh, I stuffed my bag full. We'll eat together tomorrow. Not only did the scene of Yunjian shooting Shiniji's hand the other day not make Shinsini afraid of distancing herself from her, she was even more affectionate toward her. Yunjian's lips curled into a smile. Master. Before his seat had even warmed up after class, Zhang Xiaofeng rushed to Yunjian's seat and said hot-bloodedly, Master, you must teach me real skills this time. I'm always ready. In fact, Yunjian had never promised Zhang Xiaofeng to teach him anything. It was Zhang Xiaofeng who was the one asking her for advice. This time, however, Yunjian did not evade Zhang Xiaofeng's request. Her smile faded and she looked sharp and serious. You really want to learn from me? When Zhang Xiaofeng heard Yunjian agreeing to his request, he nodded without hesitation. Yes. His reaction was so quick that it was as if he was afraid that Yunjian would go back on her word. All right. I'll teach you. Yunjian's eyes shifted, her initial smile gone. Slaying God had never taken in a disciple in her previous life. All this while, Zhang Xiaofeng had been calling her master, but she had never agreed to his request. Today, she planned to make an exception. Yunjian paused for a moment, and a vicious aura emanated from her body. She looked at Zhang Xiaofeng and said to him in a fierce tone, without the slightest hint of joking, Be my disciple. I will train you and make you a first-class expert, but the premise is that you are not allowed to complain no matter how hard it is. No matter how hard it is, you can only swallow it in your stomach. If you can't do it, you can say no now. But if you stop halfway, I'll let you know how close you are to death. Yunjian didn't seem to be joking at all. There was only one meaning she wanted to express. Once you enter this circle, you can't leave. Even if you die, you have to kneel until the end. What's more, if her disciple couldn't even endure this bit of hardship, what right did she have to stand on the same side as her? Slaying God would never accept weaklings around her. Zhang Xiaofeng's eyelids twitched when he heard Yunjian's words. He knew that Yunjian was a woman of her words. However, he clenched his fists and said to Yunjian with determination, I can do it. All right. Yunjian smiled at him and said, See you at the field tomorrow at 4:00 in the morning. Huh? 4:00? Zhang Xiaofeng was stunned. 4:00 in the south was not even dawn yet. Yunjian shot him a fierce glare and Zhang Xiaofeng immediately swallowed his words. Shinsini watched from the side and snickered. Early the next morning, the sky was still dark. As expected, Zhang Xiaofeng was caught by Yunjian for training in the field. Zhang Xiaofeng didn't have any foundation in killing moves. Fortunately, his body was flexible and he said that he had practiced judo and taekwondo before. Yunjian made him run around the field. She didn't want to train him to be an expert in fighting. Instead, she wanted him to be someone who could protect himself and kill a high-level assassin. After a whole morning of training, Zhang Xiaofeng was exhausted. However, he obeyed what he said earlier and didn't complain at all. Both of them only walked out of the field and headed to the classroom at 5:50 a.m. At 6:20 a.m., a bus contracted by the school arrived outside the school. The teachers arranged seats for the students one by one and the bus headed to the location of the spring outing, the forest park. Sitting in the bus, Yunjian looked at the youthful and excited faces of the students around her and could not help but smile. He thought, look, 2 more female students have come to give me money. How could people like them hit the jackpot? At that time, as long as there was a small prize, he would make a profit again. Since Yunjian and Shinsini were the prettiest and there was also Zhang Xiaofeng, a popular figure in school, the balloon shooting game gradually attracted a group of students who came to watch the show. Jian, you do it. Shinsini passed the toy rifle to Yunjian and pointed at a big doll excitedly, telling Yunjian, Jian, you can do it. I want that big doll, it's so cute. Yun Jian smiled and took the toy rifle, but she was not ready to aim. Sis Cindy, why didn't you let me have that doll if you want it? A man's teasing voice interrupted the conversation and said to Chin Cindy, Sis Cindy, why didn't you let me have that doll if you wanted it? Everyone looked over at the voice and saw a good-looking boy who was slightly tall and slender walking over. He went to Chin Cindy arrogantly and looked at the toy rifle in Yun Jian's hand before he spoke to Chin Cindy again in a boastful tone. Sis Cindy, have you forgotten that I've officially learned marksmanship from a master? If you want this doll, you can't let a little beauty shoot it for you instead of me. Chapter 137. As the boy spoke, he reached for the toy rifle in Yun Jian's hand. With a frown, Yun Jian turned her hand away and avoided the boy's hand. The boy did not feel awkward as he chuckled and studied Yun Jian from head to toe. Pretty girl, you won't be able to hit a balloon with a gun like this. Why don't I teach you how to do it, Ling Yichen, aren't you annoying? We're having fun on our own. Are you done? Chen Cindy could not help yelling at the boy. Ling Yichen was the son of Chen Cindy's father's business partner. He could be considered her childhood playmate as well. However, due to Ling Yichen's boastful personality, Chen Cindy did not like to play with him since they were young. Ling Yichen was also known as a playboy in school. Due to his good looks and prominent family background, many girls admired him. He was a boy who changed girlfriends more frequently than he changed clothes. It was because of this that Chen Cindy kept a respectful distance from him. Aya, Sister Cindy, who are we? Don't make it sound like we're so distant. Ling Yichen was indeed a master flirt. He managed to turn the awkward situation around with just a few sentences. In spite of it, Ling Yichen's dark eyes were fixed on Yun Jian as he spoke to Chen Cindy, looking like he was deep in thought. Chen Cindy was dumbfounded for a moment before she realized what was going on. Was Ling Yichen trying to set his sights on Jian Jian? She quickly pulled Yun Jian behind her and said to Ling Yichen, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Jian Jian is my friend. Don't you dare set your sights on her. That's right. Cindy, your cousin supports you. Zhang Xiaofeng chimed in from the side. It was rare for the siblings to be united for once. The atmosphere then turned a little strange. Yun Jian blinked and looked at Chen Cindy and Zhang Xiaofeng, who were protecting her like a treasure. She couldn't help but grin. Look at you, Cindy. You're talking as if I'm a gangster. Do I look like such a rascal to you? Ling Yichen laughed and continued to bicker with Chen Cindy in his unique teasing voice. You. Just as Chen Cindy was about to flare up at Ling Yichen, Yun Jian turned her delicate face to Chen Cindy and asked, which doll do you want? As she spoke, she weighed the toy rifle in her hand. It was only then that Chen Cindy regained her senses. Exhaling in relief, she snorted at Ling Yichen and smiled at Yun Jian, pointing at a big bunny doll. Jian Jian, I want that big bunny. Okay. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes, a clean smile forming on her lips. The crowd was displeased with Yun Jian's confidence. Someone even yelled out, how can you get this big doll just because you want it? Unless you shoot 15 balloons. Don't talk like you're a sharpshooter. Can you guarantee that you'll hit the balloon every time you shoot? The disgruntled voice came from Lu Rongrong, who hated Yun Jian to the core. Ling Yichen was annoyed that Yun Jian ignored her right after she opened her mouth, but he had always been a patient man when it came to beautiful women. Ling Yichen flipped his hair coolly. Seeing Lu Rongrong's rude remarks to Yun Jian, he was about to step in and save the damsel in distress to help Yun Jian and make Yun Jian change her opinion of him instantly. All he saw was Yun Jian looking at Lu Rongrong with a grin. She lifted her chin slightly, her hand that held the toy rifle raised and fired at the balloons without even looking at the cloth that held them. Bang, 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 the sound of balloons exploding when they were hit by the gun echoed in everyone's ears. The girl with the toy rifle did not even look at the cloth. She was shooting blindly. 15 bullets, not a single one missed. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.